I feel like I'm gonna like freestyle this a bit. I feel like it's still gonna involve colorism, but I'm gonna like talk more about like how it affects, like in terms of dating and like those. Okay. Okay, girl.
Shout out to our host.
Okay, period. Pew 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 pew.
What's the Nikki? Throw some sound effects in there.
He got them. Yeah, he got them.
Sound effects.
But you can't. We can't hear them.
The ASMR whispering there now.
So welcome back to. Are we there yet? Okay, welcome back to Kiki with the Bros. I'm Kiki. I'm Francisco.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Brandon.
Excuse my voice. I sound like deaf. Was that too strong?
No.
Okay. Maybe not deaf, but I sound like something. It's not. It ain't hot. And we love our.
It's a little deeper. Sorry.
It's a little deeper. Okay, period. Well, a little something about this. And being sick is like a built-in diet because I haven't been eating. So I might be like a new person by the end of this. I don't know. We'd love to introduce our guests, or our guests to introduce themselves. Go ahead.
I guess I'll tell y'all a little bit about me. So my name is Brandon Conley. So John Parker online, if y'all wondering online, people are like, who is this? People run up to me in person and say, hey, John, I'll just go with it. So I'll just go with it. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. So I moved here in 2008 for school and just stuck around and been calling Columbus home. And it's not bad. It's a chill place, easy to get around, not a lot of traffic. Even though the weather is here, it's not crazy. So, yeah, we'll take it. So,
can I ask you a question?
Oh, yeah.
So where did the John Parker come from?
It's an artist name. So I do music and stuff, which I've done like a lot. And I currently need to release something. So that's why I'm kind of using it as a music name.
So that's your stage name?
Yeah, it's my stage name.
I got a stage name too.
What's your stage name?
Charlie Aubrey.
And what's the talent?
Yeah.
I can't tell y'all here.
Okay then.
I'll send y'all the link.
Charlie Aubrey and John Parker.
Not the Twitter.
So y'all have like alter egos, is what you're telling me.
I do have like multiple people in me.
Okay, well, I don't know. That's something you brag about. Straight jacket. So today I wanted to talk about how colorism, or like colorism, featureism affects our day-to-day as gay men of color, and those like nuances as well, like when it comes to dating, when it comes to like jobs, when it comes to how we interact with people on the daily, in our experiences. And I think obviously our experiences are different, particularly like between me and Chris. I mean, like we're lighter skinned, we're a mixed race, and it's going to be a different experience than from you. So do you have like, I would just like to hear some of like things that maybe how colorism has affected you in your life. And also like not in
childhood or like as an adult?
Childhood as an adult, or like from moving from Texas to Ohio. Is there a difference?
Ooh, it is. That's loaded. It is, I think, in terms of like me thinking of childhood. So in terms of childhood, I think even though I was around a lot of people of color in terms of being in Houston, Texas, and it was just a lot of different races. So then I didn't feel like othered at the time, but it was still more so that colorism piece that was there. It's like, ooh, you're going to get too dark. You're going to be too this. And so those things that your friends or family may say just as jokes or stuff that they just have passed down from their parents as just sayings that families say, it kind of really weighs on you, like, well, maybe I am this, or maybe I'm not as desirable. And then even the people that you go for, maybe like, okay, let me go for somebody that is lighter complexion than me. And it's like, ooh, darker is ugly. And you start to really kind of internalize that. And I think that kind of changed for me when I moved here. And I just started to kind of get involved with more groups just about surrounding around blackness and just what that means and kind of how we've been conditioned to think this about being darker skinned, and even going into like Tyler Perry plays as far as the evil dark skinned boyfriend. And so just stuff like that. But no, I think it's changed from when I was younger till now. I think I've more so got a lot more self-love, and I find more worth in myself, and then therefore it changes on who I'm attracted to.
Do you think societal, this is both of y'all, societal beauty standards contribute to colorism within the gay community?
For sure. I feel it goes on like how everyone just thinks like just because you're light skinned that you're automatically pretty or cute or beautiful, which I don't think is the case all the time. Some of y'all are ugly.
Take the chop. Okay, hopefully they didn't hear that.
Old trash.
Um,
But yeah, I definitely do. What do you think?
I agree with that. I think that there will sometimes be a standard where it's like, oh, well, if this person is lighter skinned, then that's automatically in. And it could just depend on the person and in terms of their personality, or maybe just in terms of feature wise, what you're attracted to. And I think even that, I don't know how much of that is more so what you're conditioned to like, and how much of that is what you actually like. So I think trying to differentiate between that two in navigating through like colorism as far as like society's pressure puts on us. So I think that's something to think about.
I definitely agree. I think that media representation also plays a big role into it. I think I don't feel like I ever see two dark-skinned men or even two black gay men in like relationships when we do see like gay relationships on TV. It's a lot of interracial relationships, or it's a lot of like fair-skinned gay people that are more at the forefront of television anyway. If there are queer people at the forefront, I think that that's something that we're seeing more of, at least visibly and out queer people. And I think that is an issue, and I think that kind of leads into like what you were saying. How does it influence? Has you ever felt like you've had any like? Has it ever influenced you in your dating preferences within the gay community?
Oh yeah, like. So in Texas, I wasn't really out at all. So when I moved here to Columbus, because my dad's a pastor, so I'm like, well, I will take my sexual preferences with me to the grave of when they pass on, and we'll talk then. But no, then I moved here, and I'm just like, okay, let me be out more and just be me more. And so I think it just kind of changed the way I view things, but more so because of the time. And so the time was I got introduced to a group called Shades, and they would talk about those things that we learned as kids and help us to unlearn them. So I think it kind of was, I don't know, kind of parallel. So me kind of really actually dating for the first time, and me kind of getting to a group and being introduced into these things we learned as kids and recognizing it as something, hey, you learned this is conditioning. And so just trying to navigate those two lanes has helped me to like really date people that look actually like me, but then also recognize too whether that a person is lighter skin or darker skin. Do I vibe with them? Do I have a good rapport with them? Do we have stuff in common? Like, what do they want out of the future? What do I want out of the future? Is that aligned? Do I actually like this person? Because I think sometimes you get caught up in the, this, and I can be called this, and we're boyfriends. But it's like, do you actually even like this person? And so I think that kind of comes into play as well alongside colorism.
I have a question. So you said something along the lines of like, when you're in Texas, that you didn't really want to come out to your family, but then when you moved here, you were more accepting in yourself. Is that because like in Texas, the gay, it's different from when you moved here? Like Columbus is a city that's very like out and proud. Like you see gay people all
What
around.
part of Texas are you from?
Houston. Yeah, so Houston originally, and no, that's a good
That's
question.
crazy because all the gays is moving to Houston.
that is really true.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
No, I had no idea of like the gay scene. When I tell you, I was like I was probably very homophobic and just very like
Homophobic.
Yeah, like I think you internalize a lot of things that family will say, and it's just like you try to perpetuate that so you aren't quote unquote othered in those situations. And so you're like, nope, I'm gonna be over here just to be in line with this heteronormativity, so nobody will question me or say, hey, this guy's gay. But I think I didn't even check out the scene. I didn't even look at it. I didn't even know what it was because I was just trying to still navigate. Okay, I'm this, but I know from these cues that I'm getting from family and other people around, it's not accepted. So I'm not trying to be outwardly me at this time. And so when I moved here, that was the first time I could just be me. So I
Because your family wasn't here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then even then I was paranoid and I was just like, ooh, all right, I got to scale the wall of this club because I don't know somebody can know my family. And that's how deep and embedded it was. But for me, that didn't really take place in terms of colorism just because I wasn't really looking as far as like who I liked. Yes. Because then I was like, oh, let me get this lighter skinned guy. That's what the story say, right? Let me get the light skinned boyfriend. So I think in terms of what I saw was beautiful and what the only thing I thought was the only people that I thought were beautiful at the time. I saw like darker skinned men, but I think I wasn't checking for them until like later on when I got some more self-love. So I think that's when it kind of kicked in. And that just so happened to be when I moved to Columbus.
So you say you had some like internalized situations that you were projecting onto others?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Not only from like if somebody was more comfortable within themselves, I think that's why I said a bit homophobic too, because there were some times I'm calling them out and they're able to be themselves and I'm not. And then also, just in terms of not loving myself. So then I wasn't checking for people that looked like me until like later on. So I think it really is something that you internalize and then you outwardly project that and you outwardly seek that. So if you're not feeling yourself, you're not feeling people with your complexion. I'm not checking people with my complexion and then I don't feel like, okay, me at the time, I'm like, I'm not feeling me. So it just coincides.
This might sound crazy. I don't think I want to date a light skin. That looks like
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you. I'm happy that you brought it up because I was going to wake it up. But now that you have said it, do you think it kind of, when you say that, do you think it maybe come off fetishy to some? Like, oh, he only wants to date a chocolate guy because he light skin and
it definitely, like looking the outside in, it definitely could come across that. Like that same thing as like white guys fetishizing about black guys. I don't know. I feel like my spark for liking darker skinned guys like came like when I was just freshly early 20s, and then it's always stuck with me. I like dark skinned guys.
I think I said this on another episode talking about like what are preferences rooted in. And it's not always like even I think things that we're like super conscious of either. Whether it's like masculinity or like certain features or like why are certain features like favored over others, or why certain skin tone is favored over others. Like I think that historically, like dark skin has been attached to masculinity when it comes to gay men. And I think that is like sometimes where that comes from. I'm not saying with you specifically, but I think that with a lot of people, I've noticed that that's where it derives from, which is in turn, like, it really comes from colorism or like, oh yeah, I want me a dark skinned man and I want to be the light skinned girl. Like, yeah, like it's just.
Okay, now you say it like that, it does sound crazy.
I think you are. Yeah, I think you are right, definitely. Because then, in terms of like slavery, it even goes back to that as far as like, hey, if you were darker skinned, you were outside. If you were lighter skinned, you probably were in the house. So it's like, So just it does stem from things like that. So just being aware of what that is. So that's why I ask people, is it more so like preferences or conditioning? It could be a little bit of both. It could be, hey, one or the other. So I would just ask people to more so explore what that is for them and really try to recognize, hey, what is that? What is that about? So for instance, like in the past, I may not have liked a more effeminate guy, and now I'm just like, it's not something that bothers me. It's not something that's a deal breaker for me, because I think I had to just unlearn a lot of things. So I'm just like, I think I was conditioned to be like, ooh, I don't like this because this is associated with homosexuality. It's associated with this. But I think just being able to move here, do my own thing, learn who I am, and be comfortable with that, and be comfortable with me, essentially. So it's just like, hey, along gaining that knowledge, I've been able to just open my horizon. And so, yeah.
Okay. So you touched base on the whole slavery thing about the dark skin, light skin. Do you feel that you get a lot of colorism just outside of, like white people, but within your own community?
I think it depends on the situation, depends on the environment, I would say. I think I can definitely get it from my own community, but I think I've probably gotten it mostly from white people, to be honest. And just in certain situations like where race or color would be brought up, or somebody may look to me for a certain thing or a joke or a dance, or they'd be like, well, you know about this. And I'm like, ooh, actually, I have no idea about this.
It's like definitely a lot of microaggressions.
Yeah, they are there. They are there. But just stuff like that. Like if it comes to my own like community, as far as like black people, I can't really think of many instances where it's like, hey, this is a thing where colorism rears its head. I know there are instances. I just can't think of some that I've experienced like recently or in a while, maybe. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure people have them there, but then I don't think people share that information with me always. So I'm not sure if there was probably like an instance somebody was thinking something, and maybe I just didn't know, like, hey, they were thinking this because of my skin color. Right. So,
I don't feel like I've gotten negative things within our community, but I feel like I've definitely gotten a lot of privilege by looking the way I look, and I feel like that's the one reason why I don't want to say it's an advocate, but like I try to push for like, making sure people are more aware of what they're saying, because I know I'm privileged, so like I know I want to like help the other people on the other side, for sure.
I think that's a good segue into the next thing I was going to ask about how colorism, we see it in community dynamics with queer people or gay men specifically, and how it shows up. I think a good example, this isn't really an example of colorism, but it was definitely featureism for sure. Remember when we was out that one time at South Bend? Oh, well, my bad. This has nothing to do with the bar. It was actually for a work thing, I believe. So we were sitting at a bar. I had my hair out, so I have like
what hairstyle, I would ask.
It was just curly, which is out.
Curly.
I think I actually had just taken my braids out, probably like a few days before.
Okay, so lighter skin, curly hair out. Okay,
and Chris had his little fade haircut.
Just a fresh haircut.
He just got a fresh haircut, and this man basically was just like. He said that, what was he saying? He said I was given more natural or like less kept, and Chris was given more kept because Chris had a haircut.
Kept? Like what did he mean when he said like kept? Like what is?
He even made reference to our hair. That he made reference to the hair, but. I say that knowing like I'm 27, I'll be 28 in April, but for me to experience, that was one of the first times I probably experienced it. That's a privilege. I just started growing my hair out for the last 2 years, and I've dealt with a lot more microaggressions than I had dealt with before because it was shorter, my early 20s. And I mean, I think that so that's one of my strongest, blackest features, my hair. So, I think for me, I was like, oh, that was a realization. Like, not only like made me check my privilege is the fact that you went all this time where you didn't have to experience it, but now you're kind of like getting a taste of what like maybe a small, very small taste of what like certain things that people go through. Because I'm just like, this is how my hair grows out my head.
So was he saying like you were?
I felt like he was trying to say I was dirty or something. Like I was, oh, you don't like. I don't take care of myself because my hair wasn't cut or it wasn't. I don't know, up to his standard, whatever that was. But I was like,
be a professional standard, not a professional standard, but just beauty, I guess.
Yeah, it
like
was
a lot of unkept. When I hear from like marketing, I guess you could say, it's just you're a mess. You're not to say that you're a mess, but
like I was a mess. Like, which I was like, it was. I didn't really take it as personal because like, if you know me, you know my hair's always done. But I'm like, but did my hair be naturally out? Like this is what my hair looks like. It's curly, it's big. That's what my hair looks like. I can't help it. That's how it grows out my head. And to make a reference to that, it was just like. But I think like I've seen those things happen to others before, whether it's been my friends or things of that nature. And I think that sometimes gay men or queer people in general are the biggest perpetrators of those things because they came from another black gay man.
Because I was going to ask, in terms of like kept, does he mean like as far as like another man keeping you? As far as like
no,
hey,
like unkept. He was like my hair was unkept. Like
Oh, okay.
Oh, you don't need to do something with that hair, basically.
And I feel like that just goes back to back in the day where like certain hair textures was better than some others. Like why people would get perms for work so their hair would be straight. I feel like it all goes back to slavery.
No, it does, because then I think as far as like aligning yourself with whiteness and saying like, okay, hey, let me do this to be quote unquote professional looking, or even like locks in the workplace. So what that looks like. And just so it's interesting that your hair being out and growing out of your head as it is like looked at as X, Y, and Z. It makes sense in terms of what we've been historically taught. But it's something that people probably need to unlearn, and people probably need to be aware of how their words come together to describe your hair in its natural state. Because then it has certain meanings behind it, even though like their intention may not be this, the presentation can be that. And I think that's where people kind of lose things a lot of the time, because it's like, hey, well, I didn't mean this and I didn't mean to do this. And it's like a lot of times people aren't questioning intentions, they're more so questioning the presentation and saying, hey, I have a problem with this.
Yeah, that's why I was like, cause also I was very much consider the source at the end of the day. Like the location, like the person. It was like, I couldn't take it personal, but it was just definitely like, okay, like time to go.
And he definitely kept like trying to drag it out. Like I also didn't like about it because I think that same day I just got a haircut and I look crazy without a haircut. I look crazy. So I just don't. And I feel like I've never really experienced that from being lighter skin, and then for Fran to be light skinned as well. And I think the guy was like light skin or like brown skin.
He was like brown.
Light skin violence.
Yeah, it was like, no, like light skin tears. It's not even about that. But it was just like, it was just like an example of, but needless to say, I think that it kind of plays, how do we combat that within our community though? I think that that's like a tall tale sign of like, how do we combat those stigmas around when it comes to like colorism and featureism? Because I just feel like it's hard to navigate. Yeah. And I know that, and I think that there's a lot of like times where there's the bystander effects of people seeing things they don't check their friends about, and it kind of perpetuates the same thing over and over again. How would you combat that? Do you check people in the moment? Because I know you probably heard some people say some crazy things.
He said a lot of things. I think in general, as far as like, I had to talk about the black community, then I can go into like answering and addressing like those moments that come up in reference to colorism. So I think like culturally in terms of Black people, it's more so like, hey, what happens here stays here. You don't talk about stuff outside of the home. So I think you are almost conditioned to not talk about maybe like serious topics or major things. And so I feel like unlearning that from childhood as an adult, how I operate is more so I have those conversations. I have the conversation, I realize what it is, I try to figure out how to navigate moving forward, and then from there we can let this go and then go from set a precedence moving forward and take those old things and push those to the side and say, hey, we're not going to try to do this moving forward. This is our new norm. Let's take this and move forward with it. So I think having that view and like maybe talking to somebody like my parents, it can be a little bit interesting to navigate, because even though you're like unlearned these certain things, that doesn't mean that they have. So that conversation can be challenging. So I would say depending on who you're talking to, it could wax and wane. So if I'm talking to somebody like my parents in terms of colorism, depending on the day, it could be well received, it could not be well received. Because then if you say something that even sounds like disrespect, it could be like, all right, I'm cutting you off. We're not having this conversation, or I'm not listening to what you're saying. So it just depends. But that's just my parents. That's not every person of that age group or in that generation. Same with folks our age. So when it comes to colorism, I feel like we're in a society where people are more so calling things out, and that's becoming like the new norm to say, hey, this is not politically correct, or maybe we should say something or do something about this. So if I am having a conversation with somebody today, it would still depend, even though we mostly are growing up in this society right now, it would still depend on the person. Because if somebody's not on that wavelength with you, then you can call it out, and I think people will understand that, hey, this person will call it out. However, I don't know if the message will land depending on who it is. So I would say to say stuff if you see it, even in terms of like being a support for somebody who's experiencing it, like even sitting by them, I think that could be something, and then talking about it later. If you get a chance to have a one-on-one with somebody and they're receptive to that conversation, I would say try to have it. But then just know it may not be something that's going to be a quick turnaround, or we just going to fix it today. So it may not happen. It may happen, but I would still say try to go for it. You know.
Go ahead.
Well, I was you said something along like your parents. Well, for two questions. Are your parents dark skinned?
Yes, my parents are darker skinned.
Okay. And then you said something like your parents maybe not receptive to what's up with like the older generation, like they don't want to break their old habits.
Ooh, I wouldn't even say necessarily older. That's why I was like, it really depends on the person. So then it's more so like if somebody has unlearned certain things, when you bring up stuff about colorism, or you say, hey, maybe this may not be okay to say, or maybe saying like, hey, you're going to get black in the summertime to my nephews, maybe that's not a good thing, because they'll take it with them moving forward. But then depending on who you give that to and their outlook at the time, it could be taken as, sometimes it could be taken as constructive criticism and say, hey, I'm willing to learn. I know this person has a good heart. They're not starting something just to start it. They're saying something out of care. Or it can be taken as more so like, this is an attack on me. Like, I'm not feeling this. So just because you're calling those things out. So you could be more so trying to help in terms of education, more so in terms of like unlearning things, but that could be seen and viewed as more so like, ooh, this person is trying to start some shit essentially, or start drama, or trying to raise up a argument. And it's not more so that. So it depends on who's receiving it and what they've learned and what they haven't unlearned in order to receive that message that you're trying to give.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I'm an extremist. So
Wait, what way?
So I've had, even like outside of just this topic specifically, like I think that my interactions with like people over time, especially as I've gotten older, about like calling out things that bother me or calling out things that people do that affect communities within my intersectionality that I'm a part of. So like, I think that those are a part of boundaries, you know, and I think that sounds way more simplistic than it really is. But for example, I've had friends that have outed people and they didn't just take it as a big deal. Because for whatever reason, maybe because there's perception of, well, if it's people know because it's street gossip, and then now they have some form of confirmation. Like now I can blast it to the world. Like I just don't. I've fallen out with people with like because of these things. But needless to say, I do agree with you about like, you know, there's an educational piece, and like sometimes people are kind of like stuck in their ways. But I don't necessarily believe that's an excuse, especially how society works now. Like there's so many things that are disposal in terms of like
Google.
Yeah, Google, like for sure.
All sorts of knowledge, like there's so much at our fingertips.
I think that we allow ignorance.
We get passes.
We give a lot of passes for ignorance a lot of times, and I'm not really in the business of doing that. So like, I think even like my relationships with like, when I've had relationships with like trans people versus like cisgender people, and then them not getting along, and having to
story there, y'all.
There is a story there for sure. But even if I feel like one party may be wrong and the other party is right, I don't feel like there should ever be lines of being disrespectful, because I think you have to take into account what others say and do, and if they will do that to you as well. Like, okay, you say these things about people based upon whether it's the color of their skin or based on their sexuality, how they identify gender-wise, and you think you're just, you know, getting your jokes off because you're mad. No, you have to take into those things into account. And also, you don't know how that's going to affect me, because those may be things that...
like triggers?
They're triggering to me. I had to check myself, because I have, you know, I've been accused of having a, you know, spicy mouth. But I've definitely had to check myself.
Latina side.
Okay.
Well, is that right? Even me saying that right there, isn't that like a form of like a microaggression or a...
Yeah, it's probably like stigma, like a stereotype.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Well, as long as self-aware, as long as you're learning.
You have it here first. Ooh, I do want to talk about something you just said in terms of like, even like rules, because in rules and boundaries, because in boundaries should be more so for ourselves, rules for like other people. So like, if I'm saying, okay, hey, me and Chris are dating, and I say, if you do this, like, I'm going to do the following. So for myself, the rule is this for him, but then for myself, regardless of what he does, the boundary for me is to do the following. So then I think it kind of gets a little muddy in terms of what am I trying to say?
The expectations of each other are?
Yeah, more so expectations. And then just another side note, I think in terms of like clarifying questions, people don't ask those. So people aren't trying to figure out. So if somebody does say like, hey, I think this is incorrect, it's more so like, this is wrong. Like, I don't agree with what you're saying, or you disagree with me. Like, okay, I'm not trying to hear this person out or even hear their side. So it's more so like, people won't try to get clarity on certain situations before disagreeing.
I agree with that for sure.
So, and that also is a reference to colorism too. So it's like, hey, if I say something to yourself and say, hey, this may not be the best thing to say in reference to this, people are so quick to get on the defense, as opposed to be like, hey, okay, let me try to figure out what that is. But that's also about presentation too. So if I present it to you crazy, then it could be like, all right, I'm not trying to hear what you got to say.
I think, speaking of gay men specifically, I think we can be naturally defensive. Which is,
you have to sometimes, like,
I think but it gets to a point. Like, I feel like, yeah, I do agree that there's probably been it's almost like a trauma response where there's been moments in it, probably everyone's lives, where they felt like they've had to be on the defense because they actually are being attacked. But sometimes we project that and take that on our friends, our partners, and things of that nature, and it becomes a bit much where we need to hone that in a bit. Because I know I've been guilty of it. Like, not everything is an attack. You know, not everything is an attack.
True.
Not everything is. Sometimes, like, having those dialogues are important. Uncomfortable conversations with your friends and your family about things that they're saying that are like kind of like, ugh. Like, I remember I had a conversation like with Caribbeans. I would say they like to make comments about your weight, your body, a lot. I don't know. They'll call you fat to your face.
Well, wait, is that Caribbeans or just like who? Like,
The Dominicans. Oh no. Well, I mean, not speak for all Caribbeans, but Dominicans will call you fat to your face. So,
because I was gonna say I get the same thing in terms of like my family, and they would be like, not only that, but you got to tell them like, hey, you've gained weight is not a greeting. You getting too dark, or you doing too this like that. In terms of like colorism, it's like okay. So it's just, I think it's something people are used to saying because that's probably what they've seen. But I think we do need to call it out, even if they may not receive it right then, to say like, ooh, okay, this probably not the best thing to say, or let's switch this up and say, I don't know, if you want to joke with me, this is fine, but probably not this way.
Yeah, and then like for me, so like if this is said about like maybe like a cousin of mine or a sibling or something like that, I think that I'm the one that be like, I'll call it out.
Cringy.
It's cringy to me because, and maybe because I'm Americanized or whatever the case may be, it's not really something that's normalized to me. I take it as like you're overstepping your boundaries, you're being disrespectful because if I called you fat, auntie, or something like that, it's coming from a family member.
Yeah.
You said what?
I said sometimes like it's coming from someone that is like someone calling someone fat, like your family member. It's coming from big. So
Yeah. So like I think that those are conversations that you have to have with people. I mean, like I said, I've had to have conversations with friends about things that they have said that I have not agreed with about other people. So I think that I'm okay with having uncomfortable conversations now that I'm older. I know that that's not everybody's thing. Like, Chris, I don't feel like you like to have uncomfortable conversations.
No, and I was going to bring that up. I think that's one of my biggest downfalls, especially like in like my old relationship. I was always on defense, and like everything he says something to me, I take it as an attack. And like I'm learning you have to have those uncomfortable conversations just to be more self-aware and like to change for your partner and to grow with them. I love someone's close to me is very like pushing me to get out of my comfort zone and have those conversations. I don't think that's something that you're taught. I don't like my mom never taught us that. Like my mom always kept everything bottled in. So I don't really have I don't express my feelings the way I should. So just, having self-aware, I probably need to go see a therapist. But yeah, I feel like I'm just trying to push my own boundaries and get out of my own comfort zone.
Yeah, it's definitely a learned thing. So like if it was something that you were taught, you're not going to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's like a generational thing. Like, you're not gonna, if you're not, you ever never had anybody that's like, as you've grown older or when you were younger, growing into adulthood, just show you how to properly communicate, then that, which is a lot of people, then you're not going, the outcomes when you get older is going to affect your relationships because, it's this learned behavior. Similarly to what we were talking about before, like all of it is really like learned behavior. No one is born with innate ignorance. It's all things that we pick up. I feel the same way. I feel like I had to teach myself how to do those things because it wasn't necessarily something that was taught to me either.
That's interesting because it's like, well, how do you I know people will probably ask, like, how do you learn something from if you were taught these set of behaviors from somebody who never learned like a healthy way to talk about things or establish stuff. That's why I think it's important that you brought up, hey, therapy, and just trying to look at yourself introspectively and see, hey, what brought me to this point, and how did I get here, and how did I learn X, Y, and Z? And excuse my language, I say, this is why I always say, fuck what the mood is in terms of like a relationship or any sort of friend, family, romance. I feel like you need to establish like, hey, what's what if something's uncomfortable. If you guys are going to move forward in any sense or any capacity, I feel like you need to talk about, hey, what's bothering you? What's bothering me? How do we navigate this moving forward? And so I think a lot of times for a lot of people, stuff gets brought up over and over again because it's not addressed. And it's like people are like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now. And it's going to, whether you guys say it through your words or actions or body language, it's going to come up.
I think also, I feel like me and you had that same conversation about ruining the mood. I don't like to ruin the mood. I feel like that's one of my biggest downfalls as well.
I like to ruin dinner.
Yeah. I don't
blow the candles out. Just
and I'm learning to like be more standing up for myself. I didn't feel like I stood up for myself or advocated for myself.
Yeah.
I think that like it's like a comfortability thing. I think it's about like you playing it safe almost because like there's the fear of the unknown. If I like say how I really feel, like it not only may in this relationship, like I don't know how this dynamic's gonna work moving forward. It might mess up my relationships with others too because there's like other people that are involved. There's other dynamics that are involved. I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I like to ruin dinner at this point. I think I'm almost 30. I was bored.
I like that you say that just because it's more so like, I feel like that you should, because people are just so willing to like, hey, let me make sure that this is going good. And it's like, you guys aren't addressing stuff and you're not building like a good foundation with you. So you should address
I used to be the same
say,
way. I didn't want to ruin relationships, or I don't want, this person won't be my friend no more, or he will not want to date me no more. I don't really care anymore because it's going to fester. It's going to bother me.
I feel like
it's going to make me resentful to that person. Yeah. And I think that then it becomes like, for me, I know I start projecting, so I get passive aggressive. So I'm just like, you know what? I just might as well put everything out on the table now and push forward and have that uncomfortable conversation. Or it might not even be that uncomfortable. It just be like, it might just, this is the reality of where our dynamic is and how, what you are doing and what you're saying, how it's affecting me. It may lead to breakups. It may lead to friendships ending. It may cause a realization in yourself, something that you need to fix about yourself.
This makes me want to say something in terms of that, because I think people don't want to have those conversations just because you're going to risk, like, hey, you could lose this person, whether that's your family member or a person that is your friend or that you're romantically linked with. I could lose this person and not have them in the same capacity, and that scares me. However, you're not going to gain them by having like a false reality and a false life, living under pretenses that aren't real, and you aren't addressing these conversations, addressing these topics. And so it's like, it is a must that you should. And then even in terms of like, hey, are these conversations uncomfortable, or do we learn that they're uncomfortable? Because then when you become to have those conversations and that becomes a norm, it's like, oh, well, this is like my norm. This is not uncomfortable as it was painted to me, like at a different time. So now I'm used to having these conversations, and it's normal. And even just talking about expectations, like I feel like that leads to like tons of arguments. And I'm like, did you guys talk about what you expect? If you're going to go on a vacation with your friend, did you talk about what they want to do, what you want to do? What does that look like? And then, because then you get there and it's like, well, you didn't do this thing that I talked to myself about in my head, and I didn't have a conversation with you about, but I will hold you to the standard. And it's like, okay.
I don't know. I think like this is a thing. This is a big thing, like with the gays specifically for me. I mean, I don't feel like the communication is horrible. I don't know what in general.
Yeah.
A man will be in love with you and never even tell you.
No, I know some gay people that will, myself included. I feel like, no, it depends on the person. It really does. Like, in terms of the communication and conversation, I feel like there's some things we all probably have to unlearn in order to have like healthy conversations. So I feel like it could really just depend on the person and just how they address things, how they come to conversations. What does it look like? Do they feel like they have to yell to get their point across? Do they feel like, okay, a conversation looks like this, love looks like this to me, so I'm going to approach a situation with you with what I consider as my norms and what's normal to me to this situation. And you may be looking at it like, what in the hell is going on? This person is like yelling and just kind of going off, but I'm like, that's not, for me, that wouldn't work.
Well, I think that comes to compromise because everyone's communication style is different.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so has that maybe played a role into it because you didn't know how the other person was going to react? Not like in their behavior, but like if you had an uncomfortable conversation with them, would they turn violent? Would they turn hostile with you?
I don't think that. I think it's what Brandon said. Like, if I feel like even right now, like I feel like I haven't had an uncomfortable conversation with somebody because I'm scared of what the outcome's going to look like after, and like I'm not going to be able to have that person in my life the way I want them to, and I think that's the fear. This is very triggering because I feel like a lot of this has happened in my life. Right now, I feel like fear, honestly. Really fear in the unknown.
I mean, yeah, I feel like fear will hold you back. It's definitely held me back. I feel like if I fear, for example, I feel like if fear didn't play a role, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to y'all because I would have went out of town for college, and if I wasn't fearful, like as an example of that, like. And I probably wouldn't be living in Columbus. And I don't even know if I would be doing this work that I'm doing now. But I think everything happens for a reason. But like, I know fear was like, hindsight is 2020. I had a whole bunch of excuses as to why I decided to do what I wanted to do, to go to school in town and all those other things. But I think it was just fearfulness now reflecting. So I think that's when you have to like do some stuff. Like fear, the fear is holding me back from myself, my greatest self,
and your blessings. Honestly, I feel the same way. Like I don't think when I was coming back to Columbus, like I wanted to honestly move to a different state, not back to Ohio. But I feel like I had that fear of like, am I going to be able to do it? There's no one there. Am I able to do it all by myself?
So that's gonna make me ask: is it more so like fear of others or fear of self? Because is it like fear? I fear that people are gonna know me in totality, and then do I want to know me in totality? Do I know me? Do I want to project that to the world right now? And it's just more, especially in the intersections of being a gay man, and then like myself, a black gay man. So it's like, what does that represent to a black gay, darker skinned man? It's like, what do these intersections represent to the community and to like people that look like me, and how do I want to be portrayed, and am I falling into certain like boxes that people feel I should be fitting in, or so I do ask, like, is that fear of others or fear of self or fear of both?
I think for me it was for both.
Both. I feel like fear of disappointing myself. But then how can you disappoint yourself if you aren't really doing the action? So then it's all disappointing in itself.
Yeah, I feel like my early 20s, I was so fearful of making mistakes. I was so fearful of like messing up. I was so fearful of what other people thought or like people's perceptions of me. Now I feel like I'm so like I fall flat on my face and pick myself back up. And so because I spent so much time not wanting to do that because I was fearful of the outcome. And now I don't know what the realization was, but I think you just kind of like, I think being more comfortable with myself helped as well, learning myself. But I think, needless to say, I think I was tired of just not reaching my full potential because I was in my own way.
I feel like a lot of people That's a lot of people are. They don't achieve certain goals because they are scared of failure.
Yeah. And I think sometimes failure comes with life.
You gotta fail to learn from it.
Yeah.
Failure comes with life. Everything happens the way you expect it to happen. You know,
but I think sometimes you need to fail at certain things, because then I feel like, especially in terms of like adopting like social norms onto yourself, and you're like, well, society tells me I need to do this, I need to be this, I need to be this. Okay, if this is my intersection, all right, I need to be these things. So I feel like failure can bring out the greatest transformations, because it's like, hey, I'm trying to be in this box and this is just not me, and this is just not working, and it's not gelling, and it's not working for a reason, and I need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, like I feel like that was a good point. So I was like talking to somebody last week, and I was like, I want to move by I'm 30. I want to move to DC. And it was like, don't put that limitation on yourself. You don't have to be 30. If you want to move after you're 30, just because you didn't achieve it by the time you turn 30, it's not a big deal. And I was like, that's true. Like, I don't have to put that pressure on myself to make it happen at this time.
Yeah, I feel like I learned that too. I feel like when I was young, 20s, I was like, okay, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have my life together. It's going to look like this. And now I'm 30. I'm like, it does not look like that.
that changed, I think, even thinking along the lines of that changed my view of like marriage. And just because I feel like society's, all right, you have a high school sweetheart, you find somebody like based off of this TV story or what you hear, you find somebody in high school, y'all fall in love, y'all get married, you buy a house, you have a kid. So it's like certain things are in an order. And I feel like, I don't know, we almost get stressed if we don't follow that order, because we're like, oh, well, I feel like I'm failing at life. And it's like, no, life looks different for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we always get that message. So then when you don't follow or hit those points at a certain time, it may feel like, oh, I'm failing, or I'm not doing the best, or what am I doing with my life? Or I may get depressed. And it's just like, oh, am I succeeding in this? Am I failing? If I don't finish school by this certain time, if it takes me longer, like, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I'm dumb? Is it? Mm-hmm. So just, it makes you question. And I think it's really important for people to realize like, hey, you have your own journey. You can still have success, whether it's at this time or this time.
Would you say kind of like having some of those milestones, it's like something that could be good to help build success for somebody?
For sure.
I mean, I definitely agree. I feel like for me, like, I think as of late, not even as of late, I feel like I agree. There's a lot of pressure, especially from like that family aspect or that you have to achieve certain things to be successful. You have to be making a certain amount of money to be successful. You have to have certain things. And I think that it's not really conducive to reality sometimes, because that's not everyone's journey. I do feel like certain accomplishments, those do empower people to lend them to higher success ultimately. But I think that people internalize the success differently, like, and they measure success differently. So like getting a degree and going to college or 4-year institution, or going to get your master's, is a great accomplishment, but that might not be everyone's ultimate goal, you know? So you know, some people may want to own a home. Some people may not want to own a home. That's everyone's like life dynamic and life journey is different. I think that there's a lot of comparison and contrast. I think that happens. Like, I think people see others, probably because of like social media and things of that nature. They see those things and they kind of like put high expectations on their life that a lot of times aren't reality, and that's not really how that other person is living. And
they're depressed
still.
Yeah.
Unhappy.
Like,
social media is a drug, because they be faking it on there.
Okay, so I think that you have to figure out like what success looks like for you.
Yes.
And also like what your journey is going to consist of. Like, obviously you can't predict your life, but what trajectory are you trying to go down?
I agree with you on that. I think in terms of like milestones, I think milestones are healthy. I think it's more so that it should be your trajectory and not somebody else's. So I feel like you need to more so establish, like for you, like, hey, what's realistic for me? Am I going to be able to do this in this time? Like you can get it done. And I think it's very healthy if that's something you want to do. I would say first figure out what you want to do, then set out probably like a some sort of like guideline to reach and achieve that goal. If you don't get to it by a certain time, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means like, hey, this may not be the time, and still, if this is something you want to do, pursue that. And then I think also you need to think about how do you win specifically, because then just because I do this or I may write lists, that may not be your thing, and so that may not work for you. And so I feel like you need to figure out, hey, how do I personally win, and try to do that while you're trying to achieve your milestones.
I actually do have a question to like go back to. You were talking about boxes, and do you feel as a darker skinned gay black male that you have to be like mass presenting?
Not necessarily. Well, for me, not necessarily. I think I have moments when I kind of go in masculinity or femininity. I think I'm a good mix of the two. So I think, I do think there are certain situations where it's like, okay, hey, I may be unsure of the environment and of the situation. And as a defense mechanism in terms of like safety, I may be more masculine presenting just because I may know like, okay, they speak this way, they don't like homosexuality, and they'll associate femininity with that. And so I may be more mass presenting in terms of like a safety aspect. And there are situations too, even in terms of like the job. Or say if I'm going for a job interview, I may be more masculine presenting just because I'm like, okay, they have this view, and even though I don't agree with it, I'm still kind of playing the game, so to speak, in order to maybe land this job so I can.
So code switching.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Do you feel like code switching goes back to like colorism, or goes back to like discrimination?
I think code switching is about. I think it all plays it into each other. I think there's a lot of intersectionalities there. I think code switching becomes down to we're conditioned to believe like mechanisms of what professionalism is, and a lot of that derives from racist, systemic type of mindsets that are part of the work field and workspace, and a lot of how structural things that have played into how we show up every day not being appropriate, quote unquote. And it really affects people of color. I mean, quite honestly, when it comes to code switching. So I would say for me, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how to code switch. Like, I wish I did if I knew how to code switch. Because the reason why I say that is because I think it would have lent me not be in a lot of certain dynamics and situations that I have been in if I knew how to. I can't code switch. If I go to a job interview, they see my name, so I can't like
Francisco.
So there's a child.
What's
right
your
there.
last name?
Caro, Caro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's not something that you normally see on paper all the time. So
Let
my
me
name.
ask you this: like, when's the last time you have code switched, and what did that look like?
I mean, I guess. Well, I had an interview today. I was probably as. I was trying to, ride that line of professionalism the best way I can. But what I will say is, I think there's, different types of code switching. Like, I feel like it's more than just like you change the tone of your voice, or you're changing your vernacular, or like how you're like presenting. I think it could go into your appearance and things of that nature, how you're dressing. I think maybe I definitely think we all play into it. Like, we go in certain spaces, we know we're going to be around certain people, we might dress differently than we would. So
is that because we don't want other people to be uncomfortable?
To an extent, so probably to a certain degree.
Yeah, I would say so. And then
we don't
also,
want to
I
make
think
feel
to an
uncomfortable.
advantage. Yeah, no, I think also like trying to get an advantage out of that certain situation. So if I'm going for a job interview, my goal is to attain this job. So I am code switching to try to like make sure to try to really appease you, so to speak, and more so be like, hey, what do you like? What's quote unquote professional to you, just so I can attain the goal of this job. And then doing that, I may be like code switching, or I may be switching some stuff up to try to essentially get you to like me and get you to hire me for this job. So it is. And it could come into play in terms of like your skin color, because then it's like, all right, well, if they see me as a dark-skinned man coming to this interview, like, I don't want to do anything where I'm raising my voice or this. And so it's like those things come into play. And it's like, all right, all dark-skinned men aren't just going to be X, Y, and Z or a Tyler Perry character. And anybody can raise their voice at any time. It's just like, hey, I just may speak louder and it's just naturally me. But I feel like sometimes that could be taken the wrong way, and I could be generalized or painted on a large brush as a darker skinned man just because of my skin color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, that's where it's different. It's like, I don't have to take those things into account. You do. And so that's where I was like, okay, that's where I have to recognize my own privilege. Because I think there's a level of expectation, or people are already like, I'm going to be more feminine anyway, which it is what it is. To round this out and round this conversation out, well, thanks for coming out, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
I was in the neighborhood. I was just like,
Yeah, thanks for you've been talking about you've been wanting to get on.
You did. Yeah, you did for sure. So we're happy that you came out. And do you have any closing final thoughts, either one of you?
No.
Do you have any like things you want to plug, Chris? Brothers of Unity.
Oh, plug. Well, depending on when this episode comes out.
Sure. See, hello.
I mean, y'all have walk-in testing, don't you?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we have walk-in testings on Wednesdays. We test for HIV, syphilis. You can also make an appointment at Equitas.com for a STI panel. So that includes chlamydia and gonorrhea. We do swabs. You can also do like an HIV and syphilis test there as well.
Ooh, you guys offer PrEP, and then you guys offer something else for STIs. Because then I actually did learn this for the first time. I knew about PrEP, but I didn't know about, I forget the name for the other one in terms of STIs. And you can kind of take it. What is it called?
DoxyPrep.
We were talking about this the other day.
So that is actually something new for me that I learned the other day that you guys offered. That's why I was like, okay, hey, I had no idea.
Is this coming at? Well, never mind.
I mean, this is gonna come out in order.
You're gonna put them out in order?
Yeah, that was the goal.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
What they say, Kate, thanks, bye.
Because I was gonna be like National Black HIV Awareness Day, but.